My name is Jim Henry. I'm the director of the Herd Museum. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And on behalf of the Herd Museum, it's our honor to introduce the man behind the Simon Ortiz Labriola Center lecture series on indigenous land, culture, and community, Simon Ortiz. A member of the Acoma Pueblo and fluent in his ancestral language, Simon is one of Indian country's most acclaimed writers and poets. He has written or edited more than 20 books about his home community and about issues important to Indian people across the United States. Simon has received many honors and awards, including the Pushcart Award for Poetry, the New Mexico Humanities Council Humanitarian Award, the National Endowment for the Arts Discovery Award, the Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Writers Award, a National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, and was an honored poet recognized at the 1981 White House Salute to Poetry. And I'm sure there are many more accolades that aren't on this list.
Thank you.
Currently, Simon is professor of English at Arizona State University in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. His focus is the decolonization of indigenous peoples' land, culture, and community. With literary perspective as a guide, Simon's research and interests include cultural, social, and political dynamics of indigenous peoples of North, Central, and South America. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a big round of applause for Mr. Simon Ortiz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. And thank you all for coming. How's everybody this evening? That's great. I want to introduce Sandra Osawa. I hope you don't mind if I call her Sandy, since she is a good friend and sister in the way that indigenous people regard each other as relatives. And it's important that all people regard each other or ourselves as relatives. And I also want to tell a little bit about our Indigenous Speaker Series and the Simon Ortiz and Labriola Center lecture. First, I want to introduce Sandy. And in a little bit after I finish, she'll speak briefly, and then we will show the film, and then there will be a question and answer session after the film, which will last for about 30 minutes. Sandy, I'm really glad that you're here, because I want to tell a little bit about you. And this is what will come about in this item that's, it's written, yes, but it's also very much from your own work and what your work has meant to Native American or indigenous peoples, and really everybody. And I think that's the important thing that your work shows us. Sandra, or Sandy Osawa, who is of the Makah Native Nation in Washington, broke media barriers in the 1970s by launching the first 10-part national television series to be entirely produced, acted, and written by Native Americans. Her work continues to stand apart by combining old values with new stories, while challenging more popular images of Native Americans. 17 of Sandy's documentaries have been broadcast on both PBS and commercial television stations, and over 60 non-broadcast works have been created for nonprofit organizations. Sandy Osawa was the first Native American filmmaker to produce a 1-hour documentary for network television called The Eighth Fire, which aired on NBC stations in 1992. Lighting the Seventh Fire in 1994 aired nationally on PBS on a series called POV and was the first Indian-produced program for that major series. The film also captured top documentary honors at the American Indian Film Festival in San Francisco. Osawa's film on Maria Tallchief that we'll see tonight was America's first primary ballerina, and it was broadcast on PBS from 2007 to 2010. The film swept Fargo's 2009 International Film Festival for Best Documentary and Best of Show categories. Maria Tallchief, a member of the Osage Nation, is currently, the film, of course, is called Maria Tallchief, is currently being extended to include additional footage of key dances included in her innovative role as the first sugar plum fairy in Nutcracker. Such an extension will enable the film to play in theaters and will target a new audience. A growing number of colleges today use her work in the classroom, including institutions like UC Berkeley, Wesleyan University, UC Riverside, University of Arizona, University of Utah, Evergreen State College, University of Oregon, University of Indiana, Harvard Universities, and others. And I must also say, being a little perhaps selfish, I must say that her documentary film called Pepper's Powwow is my all-time favorite. It features the late Jim Pepper, who is or was the uncle of Jim Pepper Henry, director of the Heard Museum. Jim was absolutely a brilliant and amazing jazz saxophone player, a musician. The next time that Sandy is here, we shall have her show us Pepper's Powwow. Sandy Osawa holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and has done graduate work at UCLA and the University of Washington. She is the recipient of grants and awards from the Ford Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the American Film Institute, Native American Public Telecommunications, or NAPT, Washington State Arts Commission, J. Roderick MacArthur, the Muckleshoot Tribe, the George Soros Foundation, the King County Arts Commission, Ford Culture, and the Independent Television Service, just to name a few of the organizations that have honored her. I want to tell you a little bit about this lecture series. The Simon Ortiz and Labriola Center Lecture on Indigenous Land, Culture, and Community at Arizona State University brings notable scholars and speakers to Arizona for public lectures twice per year. Those speakers address topics and issues across disciplines in the arts, humanities, sciences, and politics. Underscoring the indigenous American experiences and perspectives, this series seeks to create and celebrate knowledge that evolves from an inclusive indigenous worldview and that is applicable to all walks of life. The ASU Indigenous Speaker Series, which is the organizational unit that we call ourselves, is sponsored by the Arizona State University's American Indian Policy Institute, American Indian Studies Program, Department of English, School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies, Women and Gender Studies in the School of Social Transformation, and all units, which are units in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at ASU, and the Indian Legal Program in the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, School of Art in the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts, and Labriola National American Indian Data Center with tremendous support from the Heard Museum, which is where we're at. Well, that's basically what I wanted to say, but mainly I wanted to, I told Sandy a while ago that I wanted her to provide that real human touch to the work that she has offered and does provide the public. So Sandy, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that people will have the opportunity to meet you and to listen to you and see some of your work. Thank you for being here.
It's a great honor for me to come all the way from the Northwest down here to the Southwest, and I have to say the skies here are so amazing. Did you see the sky tonight? It was so amazing. I just have not been down in this part of the country for so long. Of course, I traveled here often, doing many documentaries. In fact, believe that we interviewed Simon Ortiz in Albuquerque, actually. And I was going to razz him. He wants me to put a human touch on this introduction, so I was going to razz him, and he talked about Pepper's Powwow being his all-time favorite film, and I was going to say, just because he's in it. No. So Simon does play a very important part in Pepper's Powwow. Have any of you had a chance to see it here? No? Well, you'll have your chance. We brought a whole array of our DVDs, all of them, because it's nearing Christmas time, and we brought Pepper's Powwow and all the others that we've made. So you'll have a chance. I've also lowered the price here to give you a special opportunity to buy them here on the website. When you go back home, they'll be much higher. So I hope you take a look at some of these. Yasu and I have really, by the way, Yasu is also here, and he is my camera person, my editor, my husband, and the person I basically tell what to do all the time. And he'll be here also to help out with Q&A afterwards. And I want to also mention a big thank you to Jim Pepper Henry. Of course, we met Jim when we were doing Pepper's Powwow as well. And he watched us do some of the interview work with his grandmother. And so people here are very close to me here and have a big meaning in my life. And so that's why I'm very honored that Simon chose me, a very unknown filmmaker, to come all the way down here and make a presentation. And I'm especially glad that he chose Maria Tallchief, because as you know, and possibly you've read in the interview that came out recently, the big motivation for doing a story on Maria Tallchief was that there's so few good Native American women's stories out there, either on the big screen, the little screen, or anywhere. And when I looked around and I thought, well, gosh, there has not been any documentary on Maria Tallchief. Yet she's a legendary dancer. Not only was she America's first prima ballerina, but she now has the reigning status of being one of the major ballerinas in the entire world, prima ballerina assoluta. There's only a handful, and Maria Tallchief stands as one of those top prima ballerina assolutas, and she's from Oklahoma. Who would have thought someone from Oklahoma, from Osage County, could now be on the stage of Paris and so forth. So we take you through her life, showing you the highlights of her life. And I really am glad that you're here to see her and honor her and get to know her. She's one of the many unknown stories that we have out there in American Indian life. Usually there's many stories on some aspects of our life, not many success stories. And I'm very interested in success because I think that we have always been a successful people. We've always been able to adapt to two worlds. And here you're going to see a story of someone who has navigated two worlds, well, just as Simon Ortiz does, just as Jim Pepper Henry does. Maria Tallchief navigates two worlds very well. So thank you for coming, and let's see the show. Thank you. Thanks. You know, I was thinking about Maria Tallchief, and wanted to let you know that one of the things that I asked her one time, she had told me that she had gotten all the way, she was 18, and she had really already learned all the basics of her training, and then Balanchine had seen her doing the basic steps, and he had, we're still having trouble with the lights. Actually, he had told her, you know, you would just be fine if you would just learn the basics of Batman Tandu. And Batman Tandu, it's really, I don't know if there's any dancers here, but it's really the basic steps of ballet. And I had occasion to ask her, well, how did you feel after, you know, you were here, you'd done all this training years and years, and he basically told you, you have to relearn everything. And she said, oh, I was very happy and overjoyed that he noticed me. And I thought that was so interesting. And of course, she began studying and relearning everything that she had already learned. You know, she learned the Balanchine way. And I thought that was interesting to me because criticism is often hard to take. And I'm saying this specifically for any of the students here, and also anyone really in life, that it was very interesting to me how she handled what I would consider very deep, basic criticism of, well, you know, you better start all over. And so she did. And that was the way she handled it, grateful that she was noticed and watched, and that he felt that she had such potential that he wanted her to relearn everything. And it struck me as a way that she was in her own person, that she didn't see that as an obstacle. She saw that as an opportunity. So anytime that you feel in life sometimes that you're criticized for this or that, or your paper isn't received well, or what you're writing or what you're doing is not received well, I think a good lesson to take from Maria Tallchief is also to look at that as an opportunity and turn that into your strength. And that's one of the lessons that we learned while working with Maria Tallchief. We started out in about 2003, and it took us till 2007 to basically finish. We could not get access to many of the clips, the film clips that you saw. Very, very difficult, because it was all in storage somewhere. Somebody claimed to have rights somewhere, and the left hand, the New York Public Library said, you have to get these 10 signatures. And then the 10 signatures said, what? We don't know anything about this clip. So, I mean, that's how buried her history was. So, no, her clips were not available. And the film you just saw is really the only definitive work on Maria Tallchief. And it will always be the only definitive work on Maria Tallchief. There just are no others. Which is also very puzzling to me, because it reminds me again how often our history is so buried, so very difficult to obtain. And certainly doing this, we face major setbacks. Everybody said, oh, Maria Tallchief, well, I mean, this will be easy. You'll have lots of funding for this. But in fact, it was very, very slow, very, very painful, because people would say, well, Maria Tallchief, I mean, sometimes they wouldn't know her because that was a generation earlier, before their time. So, and then to get these clips was another battle, but I think also just overcoming these obstacles, knowing that here was an important story. Here was a story that it looked like no one else was going to tell. So we really need to stay committed to this, however we could, however we did. And watching this, I really did feel somewhat emotional again, because of here we are, Yasu and I, not being in the world of dance, and looking at the silent film of Firebird and realizing that we found a public domain Stravinsky recording of Firebird. So we did not have to pay for the rights for that, thankfully, but we matched that. Actually, Yasu did most of the work as editor, matching that music, that dance, to the music. So you could experience a little bit of the power and the dynamic dancer that she was. You had to have that music. So looking at these kinds of obstacles, it really is quite emotional to see this again, to just see the, you know, it might go by in, you know, 1 minute or 2 minutes, but those 1 minute or 2 minute, they took months and months and then years and years really to complete. So really that's basically our thesis because of the length of time that it took to do. And I would be glad to take any questions or comments that you all have. Hopefully you have some.
Loudly, no, sorry, I need the microphone. Thanks. Welcome to Arizona. I'm so glad you're here. This beautiful, beautiful film. You had touched on her becoming the artistic director of Chicago City Ballet, and that essentially is a whole different career. And there are very few people who are familiar with ballet in the audience probably know there are very, very, very few women artistic directors in this country, and in fact worldwide. So this in itself was an incredible achievement, and it requires, you know, the detente skills of a diplomat, the fundraising of, you know, a political operative, the skill to manage a lot of people, plus her ballet skills that she brought to bear. And I was wondering if, I know putting this together in itself is a tremendous achievement, but I was wondering if you had any opportunity to talk to her about that second career and any difficulties she encountered or any aspects of that you could shed light on.
Well, yes, the question was about her directing the Chicago Ballet Company. And yes, you're right. It was another career, another major career event for Maria Tallchief. And there were great difficulties. In fact, a lot of jealousies arose, a lot of politics, infighting. Her husband actually put up the venue so that they could practice. He did a lot of support work in that realm, but the board of directors, basically, it was a very, I would say it almost reminded me of an Indian political battle because there were so many factions involved, so much politics. And basically, she just could not take it anymore. She was, in a sense, almost pushed out of her own creation. So that is in itself a big, big story, you're right. And in our limited time, PBS likes you to come in at 58 minutes, and you maybe could feel some of the things that we just had to get in and that we had to leave out. But yes, she has a big life story. She does have a book that she wrote in collaboration with Larry Kaplan, and you might be interested in that as well. So, any more thoughts? Yeah. No, you might answer this one.
You're in the screen, you're in seeing all this. Where do you see this going with new tools?
There you go.
Yeah, I think technology.
Here, wait. There.
I think the technology do help. Internet, for example, we were able to purchase some photographs from England, for example, or France, very easy, more easier than, let's say, 10 years ago when you had to do the slow mail system where everything takes forever. Whereas this way, you pump the money, you pay a credit card, and it comes in 2-3 days. You know, so there's that access there is much more greater than ever was. So it does help, especially dealing with history aspects of the film. You could obtain rare photographs from eBay, from people's personal homes, and call them.
Yeah.
And some more access to these materials abounds. But we're finding also that major part of the history is also held by corporations. They actually buy these photographs and makes it very hard for individuals, laymen, to access without paying a whole bunch of money. So it's getting more limited each day as it goes, because there are greed out there. I mean, no doubt. And that's part of the game. So me and Sandy have hit the brick wall a few times. And to making films, people think it's very glamorous and very artist life kind of thing. It's not. It's hitting the battle, because the higher you go, let's say for PBS and that kind of area, the battles are much more tougher. You have to be warrior. You have to be out there with your shotguns out there, blasting away. Else, you're going to be shot down. It's not just equipment. You're talking about technology makes it easier. Oh, yeah, you could do your family stuff, your dogs and cats, and film it and make something out of it. But if you do something that really hits people's mind, that really changes the aspect of how we see other people's lives, let's say for Native Americans, that brick wall is there because they have entrenched themselves to hold off from any new vision, any new way of looking at Native people as people, because that's not what they want you to see. They want you to see the cowboys and Indians being savages. That's been ongoing thing for hundreds of years, and they are not going to stop. So for us to achieve a level that Sandy was able to achieve, it's a battle, because that's not what they want.
I'm just going to say a quick thing while someone thinks of another question, but the Guggenheim, where Maria was coaching and teaching, we were told at the last minute, no, you can't come in. And you know, Maria luckily was right there in the elevator and heard the director saying that. I think she was with the Balanchine company, but at any rate, Maria just said, come on, get on the elevator. And so we were able to do that. But there were so many moments like that that were looked like big obstacles, you know, to be doing this, because we probably didn't look like the typical film crew that they would want to have, you know, at the Guggenheim. So we had those kind of obstacles. Also with Pepper's Powwow, when we were filming Prospect Park in Brooklyn, Yasu was all ready. We had all the permissions verbally over the phone. We thought everything was set. And we were doing this concert, very memorial concert that we had to have. And the guard came over to Yasu and told him to turn off his camera. And so there was kind of a few moments of, he just stood there and watched, and it was kind of like this whole confrontation. And then I kind of moved over to the background in the fence. And then there was kind of this breeze that came up, and there was some kind of happening in the air, and suddenly this guard disappeared into the crowd, and we watched him just disappear and go off somewhere. And just then the concert started, and Yasu clicked on his camera, and we recorded the whole event. And those are kind of moments that appear in the making of many of these films, that we received help, you know, and it has to be another dimension, I think, because it just comes. Charlie Hill's program we tried to get for his appearance on the Johnny Carson show, they wouldn't let it out. It was all tied up, couldn't happen, and we started editing, and then toward the end of the edit, this parcel arrives, and it was Charlie Hill's appearance on the Johnny Carson. There was no person, no note. We didn't know who to thank, actually. It just came. And so those are examples of, yes, many obstacles, but yes, there were also some very powerful forces at work. That's the only way I can describe it.
I think you could only get that.
Here.
I think you can only obtain those kind of forces that's going to help you by really being out there doing it. If you just sit back, nothing's going to come to you. You have to expose yourself. You have to be out there. You got to push buttons. You got to have your equipment out there. Then things will click in. Otherwise, you could sit back, nothing happens. And you could be saying, well, I can't get anything done. Well, you're not out there.
Next question, anybody? Somebody.
Hi, my name is Craig. I'd like to first of all let you know that I really enjoyed the film and I thought it was completely inspirational, and I'd like to thank you very, very much for putting that together. My husband and I do documentary films. I know the struggle of piecing together a documentary on the type of stories that we want to tell. My husband has finished the documentary on Geronimo, and he's working on another historical documentary currently on the Apache Scouts. And we're running into the same issues. These are, you know, figures that are further in the past than Maria Tallchief's history is. So I was actually a little dismayed to hear that it still seems to be as difficult for you as it is for us, you know, to seek out resources and references and interviews and, you know, just stories that surround the subject that we're focusing on. But I'm so happy that it came together, and I'm glad that you're here to share that, because it's actually a little bit strengthening and inspirational for me to see that something like this has been put together, and we're still facing the same struggles. That is a little bit dismaying, but it's also inspirational to know that those obstacles can be overcome. Thank you.
Well, one thing is to achieve the making of documentaries, but after you make it, that's another battle. Because once you have issues that majority of people don't want you to make, or they don't want to see, that's when you're going to run into another brick wall. We had here on Maria Tallchief 2 Democratic presidents, and that's no-no for a very conservative world. John F. Kennedy and Clinton both were shown. We couldn't help it because they were the only one that really talked about Maria Tallchief and the arts, so we had to do it. But that also creates roadblock when showing in a bigger arena, because there are people, gatekeepers so-called, don't want that up there.
Well, you're getting the mic. I just want to add that I think anytime you're telling the truth in terms of your documentaries that you're making, it's very, very difficult, especially because, you know, I really think that our image is so molded and so preserved. You know, if you go to any place, you know, we're looking at the DC portraits and how these are all our frozen images, and you know, documentary people come along and they want to look at a different side of us, our lives. We want to show a different story, but yet the image is so strong and it's so romanticized, and people do not want to let that go, and they're not going to let that go easily. So I don't know if that's any comfort to you, but you do have to keep going. And as Yasu said, is once you make it, there's the gatekeepers that American Masters, for example. This needed to be on American Masters, PBS, you know, greatest ballerina, American ballerina, first prima ballerina. So, you know, the question is, why did they turn it down? You have to ask them. But it was not on, you know, and it should have been prime time. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of disappointments like that. But the fact is, once it's made, there is a strength and a truth to that, and it exists. It exists, it's there. If we had given up, there'd been nothing. The same with you. If you give up, there won't be that particular story that you want to tell and that should be told. And so I think that, I hope that gives you some encouragement to keep going, because you have an audience like this that I can tell you're very appreciative of it, and that you get it, and that you see, you get a new sense of a new story. And so this is encouraging, and that will be with you too when you show to audiences. There'll be more and more audiences that are going to appreciate these kinds of alternative stories. Oh, Simon. Oh, go ahead. Simon.
I have a question and a comment, Sandy, about dance itself and the fact that Maria Tallchief is so much an icon of dance done by indigenous people, native people. If anything is, you might say, even stereotypical, but if anything is very symbolic and iconic of any art form related to indigenous people, it's dance. Dancing is motion, is expression, it's expressive art. It's how one feels about himself, herself. Dance, oitse ani, is dance in terms of motion, as well as form, as well as expression. And my question has to do with dance as a fundamental Native American form of artistic expression. As you may know, dance is not just artistic. Dance is fundamentally telling yourself and everyone else that you're alive, and this is what it means to be alive. So I wonder if there's ever been a movement to have, say, Maria Tallchief be celebrated as a dance, not only dance extraordinaire, but dance as a way in which the indigenous people of the Americas, the Native Americans, are alive in the very act of dance, and that she and other dancers and the dance fact itself is an expression of that movement of life. Has there ever been a movement such as a Tallchief Center for Native American dance ever begun?
Well, Simon, the way I'm going to answer that is that she speaks about an experience that happened once in Chicago where the public school kids were invited, and she was going to teach ballet and talk about ballet. And it was going to be Indian kids, actually, from some of the local schools in Chicago. And she was really looking forward to it because she would have a chance to talk to Indian students about dance and ballet. And her belief was that, you know, dance and ballet, and it belongs to everybody. And certainly Indian kids could learn a lot from it. But somebody, and we don't, you know, she doesn't know who it was in the administrative level, decided not to invite the Indian kids, the Indian students. So when she got to the studio place, they were just non-Indian students. I guess they had the belief that this is just for non-Indian students. It shouldn't be for Indian students. And she was really disappointed. But I thought that was a telling experience in the sense that, you know, a lot of times the powers that be decide what is going to be done in terms of, actually Simon spoke about this in Pepper's Powwow in terms of what is an Indian and what are the limits of an Indian. And many people think, well, it's not Indian to be a ballerina, or not Indian to be a jazz musician, not Indian to be a rock star. These are Simon's words, not Indian to be a poet. And this is the very same thing that Maria faced, you know, on a daily basis. And so to answer Simon's question, no, there really has not been, because I think there's still this obstacle in defining and really broadening the definition of what an Indian is all about. That's one of our missions, is to really create that expansion so that we're not locked into one view, that we can expand that definition of what an Indian is, and maybe after that's done, there will be such a day as a Tallchief celebration. But I think it's going to take some time, some educators. Thanks.
Thank you.
And there's a question in back.
First of all, I want to really think it was a beautiful, beautiful movie. And I have more of an artistic question. That is, what was your inspiration for choosing to do a movie about this amazing dancer? What was the seed that brought this about?
Let's see, what was my inspiration? You know, I had done a few profiles, Jim Pepper and Charlie Hill, and I really wanted to do something with a Native American woman. And I had heard about Maria Tallchief when I was going to summer school in Colorado. I met some Osage students. It was a workshop on Indian affairs, and they talked a lot about these famous Osage sisters, Maria and Marjorie Tallchief, and I was so startled to hear that we actually had Indian women that were famous ballerinas, and for some reason, you know, you just don't hear that in everyday conversation or news or anywhere like that. So that stayed in my mind, and that probably was in the 60s, and then I met her daughter, Elise, who you saw on, in this film, and I asked her directly if her mom ever had a major documentary. I'd never seen one on Maria's life, and she said, no, would she be interested? I wanted to know, and well, why don't you call her? And I got her number and called her, and so she said, yeah, let's do it. That's how it started, and that really was my inspiration to, you know, the stories of Native women are not very good out there. There's no strong characters, no strong figures, and of course, you can't get much stronger, you know, in terms of both physically strong, and, you know, I learned a lot about the stamina it takes to be a dancer, especially of her caliber, the strength, the training, the hours of training. They talk about her training so much that her toes would bleed on stage, you know, during rehearsal, and Balanchine would say again and again and again, and her toes would just be bleeding, and she would continue. So yeah, there's great admiration I have for her and learning about her, and I just wanted people to know a good story of a strong Native American woman.
Well, thank you very much for your